What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my refined review and builds guide for Thorr, Pirate Tibarn, Jill, Shamir, Otr, Guinivere, and Dithorba. So let us begin with Thorr, who is definitely the big winners out of this batch because of the amazing remix that she got and also a pretty solid refine. So War God Mjolnir did have -1 special cooldown and it does have the effective damage against armors. It definitely does help against a lot of the near save armors, but still they're going to be having Shield Fighter to be really tanky. Now with the refine, she's able to have +12 attack in the combat, and she also inflicts -12 attack debuff on the foe in the combat. She did have the Dalwall effect previously, but she needed to be solo, and now the condition for it is much better, and she also has guaranteed 12 attack. She now has true damage based on 15% of her attack, which is much needed for having better firepower. She also has Canto 2 built in her refine, so this actually makes it so that you don't really need to give her Emblem Seeker to get the Canto out of her, and that can really help you when you have some other Gale Force unit or just any kind of other unit who's trying to use the Emblem Seeker ring. So I actually do appreciate the fact that she's got fixed Canto here, and then she also has flat damage reduction based on 15% of her attack, and she also has damage reflection. So this means that she can hit really hard with bonfires and Ignis, and this can also help you on your follow-up attacks in the player phase, as you're going to be able to get more damage output because of the reduced damage. So this is a pleasant surprise on her refine. And then finally she has got the full damage reduction piercing on her special triggers. So this is a bit annoying because she's mostly going to be used with Gale Force and Ether Raid's offense a lot of times, and this kind of null damage reduction is not going to be working with Gale Force. You will have to use some kind of offensive special like Bonfire or Ignis so that you can get the full damage reduction piercing. But still, nonetheless, this refine is pretty solid and gives her some new things to work with, and the damage reflection can also be really helpful when it's paired up with stuff like Excel Skill. With her remix, she is going to be one of the best Astro Mythics in the game because it has got Omni Guidance 4 built in. So this is something that we have seen before on Legendary Lincia and on Attuned Micaiah as well. And having this on a Mythic is so useful because no matter what kind of movement type or unit you use, you're always going to be able to make use of this kind of warping. And this also helps you offensively just to tank things better, to initiate combat against the enemy teams, and also for collecting the pots. So this kind of warping support is extremely good. And then for herself in the combat, she's able to get +5 attack, defense, and resistance. And just like the old World Breaker, she does get +1 special cooldown charge per attack. And now she gets special cooldown -2 jump before her first attack. So this is really helpful for triggering Bonfire and even for triggering Gale Force, because this kind of special jump does work with Gale Force unlike many of the other special jumping that we have got. So she's able to Gale Force easily and also nuke much better. And not only that, she also gives support to the allies in 3 spaces. And this 3 space range, in my opinion, is really good because even a mythic unit that came last year, her support only works in 2 spaces, and even Fallen Veil, who just came out this year. So the fact that this works in 3 spaces does allow some flexibility. So she's going to be giving +4 attack, defense, and resistance in the combat to those allies. They also get special charges +1 per attack, and they also get special cooldown -1 jump before their first attack. And again, this is going to be working with Gale Force. So the combination of the special jumping with the special charges effect does make it a lot easier for her to function as a Gale Force support unit. And even outside of supporting Gale Force allies, now she can support the tanking allies because the special jumping does act as a way of combating the Scowl effect or Harsh Spectrum, which is going to be really common with Brave Female Robin. So this kind of support is going to be universally useful, and that's why I think that she's easily one of the best Astro Mythics because she's just so flexible. She provides the warping, she provides the special jumping, and she can also Gale Force herself really well. And now she also can kill units a lot easily, which she had a lot of trouble doing before this refine. So I'm really satisfied with what they have done with Thorr, and she's completely revamped now. She also gets Guard Bearing as a remix skill, so that could be run on a budget, and at least you could give her attack, defense, catch 4 because push 4 skill is not the best. So this could be run, and you could just run Emblem Celica so that she can warp, and she does have fixed Canto, which means that even after warping, she's going to be able to canto 2 spaces, and attack defense clash is going to be a pretty good sacred seal along with that. And plus attack IV is always going to be the best IV you could go for her, as she does scale off for flat damage reduction and a true damage based on her attack, and it also helps her quite a lot in the combat. If you're going to be giving her slightly more expensive scale, then attack defense clash 4 could be worked out, and because of the -2 special cooldown jump from Worldbreaker Plus, you can actually run Emblem Marth and have a 2 cooldown Ignis, so this is going to be giving you better damage output, and a damaging special is going to be completely piercing any kind of damage reduction of the enemy. So this is also an option that you could try and do with her and just run the double clash skills. And the best Lottie skill for her is going to be attack defense excel because of the damage reflection that she has got, and the flat damage reduction out of this does help her survive, and conveniently this is also present on Otr as a remix skill, so she would definitely like to have it. Unfortunately, Guard Bearing 4 is not the greatest slot B scale, but she doesn't really have the speed to run something like Wyvern Rift, and there is the option of running Reopening, but she does have the guaranteed follow-up attack in her weapon, so I guess if you don't have the option of foddering something for her slot B, then you could still just keep Guard Bearing 4, but a lot of people are going to be using her as a Wings of Mercy follow-up unit in their Aether Raids offense teams, and there she's going to be functioning even better now. So Wings of Mercy 4 could be run, and attack defense excel is always going to be working with that kind of warping. Emblem Marth could be run depending on your team composition, but many times on the Gale Force teams you probably need Emblem Marth on some other unit. So even without any kind of Emblem ring, she's going to be able to Gale Force just fine. She could also be used as a Gale Force initiator with a Double Fury build like the good old days, but nowadays we just have so many better Gale Force initiators, so she's mostly going to be working as a follow-up unit. And if you're going to be tanking, then she could be used for the cleanup. So you could either run Bonfire depending on if your team doesn't have that firepower or not, or you could also run Gale Force so that you can pick off like 2 units at the same time. And Aerial Maneuvers is actually a pretty good skill for her because she doesn't have the 2-space warping for herself. She gives that out to the other allies with her remix. So this can help you have better mobility, especially if she's going to be a part of your Mythic core. And you could also use Emblem Celica if you want to, and then run something else in the slot B, but again, if you don't want to run Emblem Celica and it's already present on some other unit, then this could definitely be done. And if you want to stack a lot of the flat damage reduction and use the damage reflection to the max effect, then you could try and run Reopening and attack defense excel. Again, she does have the guaranteed follow-up attack in her weapon, but still Reopening can give you decent amount of flat damage reduction, which honestly I value way more than the pierceable damage reduction of Guard Bearing. So if you have the fodder, this is something you could do at max investment, and Emblem Ike is going to be really helpful for providing even more unpierceable damage reduction. Pirate Tibarn gets a crazy stacked weapon refine, which I don't think anyone saw it coming, and he can rival a seasonal premium unit with this kind of weapon refine and even be better than him. So Sky Pirate Claw gave him -1 special cooldown and also the guaranteed follow-up attack, and now with the weapon refine, he's able to have more speed. He's actually able to have +10 attack and speed in the combat, and also +5 defense and resistance, while inflicting -5 attack debuff on the foe, which can help you, especially if you're trying to run him at super budget with something like Heavy Blade. And I wish that Thor got something like this in her weapon refine. So he has got the passive 50% damage reduction piercing, which means that he can definitely try and run something other than Fierce Beast or Beast Assault for that matter. He also gets 7 HP healing after the combat, and maybe it's just me, but they are purposely putting the healing on the units that are meant to Gale Force. So I guess there's the healing to have the self-sustain, and then on the closest foes and the foes in 2 spaces of them, he's going to be having a splash debuff effect for -7 speed and defense debuff, the exposure status, which is going to be giving you true damage, and the frozen status. Now frozen status is quite new. We only saw this on Summer Raid as a status effect, and then we saw it on Piercing Cold, which is a captain skill in Summoner Duels. So Frozen basically makes it harder for the enemy to double you and also makes it easier for you to double them. And it pretty much uses your defense against the foe's defense to make the follow-up manipulation. So it's a really busted effect, and it helps so many tanks, and the tanks which have a lot of speed and a lot of defense enjoy this a lot because they can tank even better, and Frozen status can stack up with Frozen effects of Wyvern Rift, of Pegasus Rift, or in the special of Attuned Chimera. So this is going to be making him a really unique support unit, and in many cases he's going to be better than Summer Reed because he's a flying unit. He could run Soaring Echo, he has got access to other skills which as a Cavalier Reed simply cannot run, and he also has access to some of the Beast exclusive skills like the Wild skill and also Beast Threaten, which does help him have better support and combat. So quite a crazy effect. And then he also gets true damage based on 15% of his attack. He also has Null Guard, which is going to be helping him tremendously in Gale Forcing. And then he has got the +1 movement when he transforms. So Pyre Tibarn just became a really good unit overnight, and now he's able to function as a much better Gale Force unit, and he also has many options to even support his allies, like I said, being a beast unit. And keep in mind that Frozen status has a pretty low priority when it comes to the cleansing of Attuned Micaiah and also Ninja Saline, I guess, at this point. And because he's a beast unit, you could actually try and overwhelm Attuned Micaiah's cleansing by inflicting the panic status with Beast Threaten, and then he also has the exposure status. So Attuned Micaiah is simply going to be cleansing the first two higher priority penalties, and Frozen status is going to be there. So that is one of the big things that you should be keeping in mind while trying to use him. And if you're just going to be using him on a budget, then just by existing, he can make your units better with this kind of support. You could give him Emblem Seagate Ring because he doesn't have Canto in his weapon, and he can also get +1 movement consistently, regardless if he gets transformed or not. And you could at least try and replace his Slotsy with Attack Defense Rain, which is going to be helping you with the Heavy Blade check, and then you could just run Attack Defense Clash. But one of the best units to fodder to him is going to be Icthonier, so you could get Attack Defense Excel and Beast Threaten at the same time. And like I explained, Beast Threaten is a really important skill for him as a support unit, so you should be trying to get that. And you also get Fierce Beast at the same time, which is not needed as much on him because of his 50% damage reduction piercing, but still it's not the worst thing to have the full damage reduction piercing and have a special scale off his attack. So you could still run it if you don't have access to Sturdy Beast and an extra Halloween Asker. And unfortunately, we don't have the tier 4 version of Beast and Trace, so Speed Defense near Trace 4 could be run in a slot base so that you could get the Canto without using Emblem Seagate. But if you want to use Emblem Seagate, then something else could definitely be run here, as I'll showcase in a few of the other builds. So this is a build that you could run to support much better, and Soaring Echo is an attune skill, which is going to be his best attune skill to provide the warping support to his allies. And if you want to improve upon the Gale Force build, then Attack Speed Wild is going to be his best Lottie skill. I know we don't have Attack Defense Wild, but still, the speed variant isn't really all that bad with the Frozen that he has got. And this also gives you these special charges, and combining that with his Null Guard, it does make it so that you can easily trigger Gale Force, and you could also upgrade Dive Bomb to aerial maneuvers, so he can get the warping, and he can also trigger Gale Force with his follow-up attack. And Deadly Miasma is going to be coming along with Soaring Echo anyways, and that's actually a pretty nice player phase skill that it could run. And in Aetheroid's offense, this can actually help you because you can override the ice tiles with the haste rain of Deadly Miasma. You could also try and run him with Momentum 4. I truly feel like this is the way to build him if you want to enhance his combat to the max potential. So Sturdy Beast is going to be his best special, giving him the unpierceable damage reduction, and with Emblem Seagate, he's going to be able to get the fixed Canto 3, which is much better with this kind of build as we don't really have the space of running any kind of Canto skill. Attack Defense XL can give you the flat damage reduction, which can make him even more bulky with Sturdy Beast, and Momentum 4 makes it so that you could have even more true damage, and he's able to hit much harder and immediately trigger his Sturdy Beast. So that does help him nuke much better. Beast Sacred Seal could be used so that he can easily transform. I don't think he's going to be benefiting that much from a Fortune skill because Beast Threaten is easily one of the best skills for him, and the synergy between the Fortune skill and the Panic of Beast Threaten is not the best. You could also try and use him as an Aetheroid's offense tank support. So with many of the tanks that have high speed and high defense, he's going to be really good in Light Season. In the Astro Season, Freyr is just going to be cleansing the Frozen status. He doesn't care about that. But like I said, you could try and overwhelm and overload Attuned Micaiah by running Beast Threaten, and Attack Defense Snag is also an option that he could run to inflict the Sabotage status on the enemy. So this way he can provide even more support. I guess if you don't have Beast Threaten, you could HP stack and run something like Sudden Panic. But Beast Threaten is going to be enabling you to run some other supportive skill in slot B. And it also has the Time Pulse 3 effect, so it can help you with Gale Force and cleanup. And then finally, if you're going to be using him as a Wings of Mercy Gale Force follow-up, then you could try and run Attack Speed Wild, and Beast and Trace could still be run so that he could transform easily. And whenever the tier 4 version of the skill comes out, you could try and run that, and Mercy Wing Echo could be used in combination with it. So with Beast Threaten and Emblem Marth, you're going to be having a 2 cooldown Gale Force, which you could trigger in a single attack with the special charges of Attack Speed Wild and also the Null Guard of his weapon. Jill is a sleeper good refine out of this patch. Even though her combat is not really all that insane, I think her support is definitely pretty nice and really helpful, especially with the meta threats that we have got. So Todrigan Axe did have -1 special cooldown, and it did have Desperation built in. And back for its time, it was definitely pretty unique. Now we have seen a bunch of Desperation status and a lot of weapons that have got Desperation built in. So I don't think it's that crazy, but because of it, she's mainly going to be functioning as a player phase unit, and you should be focusing your skills as such. And now with the Weapon Refine, she gets +12 attack and speed in the combat, which honestly is not enough with the baseline that we've got on the modern arcane weapons and the weapons in general. I'm not sure why they didn't bump this up to at least like +15 to attack and speed. She doesn't really get defense or resistance, so I think that could have been done. And now with the Weapon Refine, she's able to get special cooldown +1 per attack. So this means that she could trigger something like No Coder on her double attack, and she is going to be relatively fast, so she could make use of that. And she also has Cantor, meaning +1 movement in her Refine, so this is basically the Neotrace effect. And this, along with the other Refine effect that she has got, it pretty much means that you don't need to run Emblem Seagate Ring on her. And then to herself and the melee allies in 3 spaces. Keep in mind, this is in 3 spaces. She gives the +6 attack and speed buff, the +1 movement. Doesn't matter if you're armor, cavalier, or flyer, or infantry, you get that, and you also get the null follow-up status. So this is actually really good, in my opinion, for many of the Gale Force teams in Ether Raid's offense. And even outside of that, it's pretty good support for just hit and run, because your cavaliers can have the +1 movement without using Emblem Seagate, and you also give null follow-up status to them, which is not all that easily available to them as a cavalier. And this also means that you could free up certain skills on units, like Brave Felix comes to mind. You could just not run his Endless Tempest and run something else that could maybe let him get the special cooldown or maybe support his allies, and he also gets the null follow-up status. Now granted, he's going to be missing out on the dull effect out of Endless Tempest, but still, it does open up some pretty nice options. So your entire team gets null follow-up status, which is really helpful. And this also means that many of the Beast Cavaliers can just get the +1 movement, and long gone are the days of trying to trigger Legendary Seagate special to get the +1 movement, or even using Legendary Azura, and now you can just get this with Jill. So I definitely like this quite a lot, and it does have applications, like I said, in Ether Raids. And finally, she has got some true damage to improve with her damage output, so she gets 20% of her speed as the true damage. I do feel like Jill's combat herself is lacking a bit. Her support is really nice, but I wish she got something more for the combat effect. Maybe something that could make her hit harder, or even like potent follow-up attack like Uller. That would have been quite amazing with her Desperation effect. So Jill is definitely much better now, and again, did not expect a unit like her to be turned into a support unit, just like Tibarn. So if you're going to be running her on a budget, you could try and run Attack Speed Clash 4 on her. It's definitely one of the better slotty skills that you could run, because she does get the +1 movement out of her weapon, and the attack and speed debuff neutralization is really helpful. Hit and Run is unironically a pretty good budget slot skill that you could try and run on many of these units. So she has got the Neotrace effect built in her weapon, and with the Hit and Run, you're able to retreat a bit more. And with Emblem Celica, you're able to warp in and engage much better. And you can also just run Attack Speed Clash or Blade Session as the Sacred Seal. Plus Speed Ivy is going to be needed on Jill, because you need that to double the enemy and make use of your Desperation effect. And if you're going to be giving her some more expensive skills, then I guess you could run Flared Sparrow and Assassin Strike combo with Fatal Smoke 4, so basically foddering a Winter Yunaka to her. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of these kinds of Flared Sparrow Assassin Strike builds after Breath of Life 4 and Hathrin's Divine Nectar, but it's technically an option for her player phase, and Assassin Strike does give you the true damage based on enemies' defense, so it can help her improve her damage output. And the thing that she has got over many of the nukes that would try and run this kind of build is that she has got more defense, so this makes the effectivity of her Fatal Smoke 4 much better against the opposing Breath of Life 4. So if you have seen Emblem Sigurd with his base kit Fatal Smoke 4, you can see that he can reduce a lot of the healing, and that's because of his higher defense. Now, Jill doesn't have nowhere near as crazy of a defense stat, but still it does help her, and that's one of the ways of using her defense productively, because she's not going to be running Wyvern Rift as a player phase desperation unit, and No Quarter is going to be her best special because she doesn't get any kind of damage reduction piercing in her Refine, so you can use this with the special charges of her weapon and trigger it on your double attack. And then you could just run Soaring Echo as the attune skill, as it is always going to be run on these kinds of flying units. And a new skill option that Jill can definitely try and make use of is Sly Swift Sparrow. So this is from Ninja Tharja, and this basically gives you +8 attack and speed and guaranteed follow-up attack, which is whatever on this kind of fast null follow-up unit, but it gives you +5 true damage. So that is something that the Clash skill doesn't give you. So you could try and run this, and you can also make use of Potent 4. You get the 3 attacks, and that goes really well with the Desperation effect and her weapon. And Deadly Miasma is the best Lotsie skill for Jill by far because it goes really well with her player phase playstyle. You can set up the haste terrain, you also ignore the visible buffs of the enemies, and you also get the in-combat stat debuffs on the enemy. So it's a really good option with the existing support that she's got in her Refine, and that does come with Soaring Echo from Attuned Ivy. And if you don't have Slice to Sparrow, then you could still run Attack Speed Clash 4, as it is pretty much gonna be one of her best, if not the best option. And you could also try and run Momentum for Inner Slot B, so this can enable you to immediately trigger No Quarter on your first attack instead of trying to trigger it on your second attack, which may or may not happen. So Momentum 4 could be useful for that, and you also get even more true damage, so that can improve your damage output significantly. And she already has the +1 movement out of her weapon, so making use of Momentum 4 is not really all that hard. And the visible status effects out of her weapon also helps you trigger Slice to Sparrow's condition. And you can try and stack up all of the true damage along with Momentum 4 and a weapon refine to improve her damage output. And like I said, she does have applications in Ether Raid's offense, so she could be run as a Wings of Mercy follow-up unit. She does have these special charges in her weapon, and with Quicken Pulse and Emblem Marth, she can easily have a 2 cooldown Gale Force that she could immediately trigger on her first attack. And if you run her with Asker or something like that, then you're also able to trigger your Gale Force even against the guard effect. Deadly Miasma is especially really helpful in Ether Raid's offense because you could try and initiate combat with Brave Felix and Emblem Sigurd, but even if you engage on the enemy team, there are still some of the ice tiles that are left. So Jill could just jump in, kill something with Gale Force, and then set up the haste terrain and make it easier for your Gale Force allies to just take on the enemy team without any kind of obstruction. Shamir gets a modern Eleonora type of weapon refine. So Survivalist Bow did have -1 special cooldown, and she does get +12 attack and speed in the combat. She also gets special cooldown -1 jump before her first attack. So this can help you trigger something like Deadeye or Curve Shot. And if you try and run Time Pulse Echo or just Time Pulse 4, then this could also help as an anti-scal effect. And that helps Shamir a lot because she's going to be getting scaled left, right, and center with Harsh Spectrum and the scal effect of the actual meta tanks and dragons. She's got the sweep effect, and now it's easier than before. She doesn't have to be solo. But honestly, the sweep effect has kind of fallen off, with many of the meta tanks just having null counter disrupt, like Emblem Ike and then Duo Fiorm. And there's also the existence of null counter Echo, so it's not strong as it was before, but still it can be helpful in some scenarios. And on the closest foes and foes in 2 spaces of her, she's able to have the splash debuff of -7 speed and defense debuff, and also the sabotage status. So this does help your allies and also helps her in the combat. And she's trying to inflict the status effect similar to Duo Shamir, which I kinda like. And then she's able to get the attack speed null penalty, which means that she doesn't need to run any kind of unity skill or stuff like Verge of Death. And then finally, she also gets the true damage based on 20% of her speed. So I'm not too impressed by this kind of weapon refine. At least it's better than Arcane Darkbow for what it's worth, but that's still a quite low bar. She's at least able to provide the support to her allies with the sabotage status, so it is nice to have with the debuffs, but for herself in the combat, she has got some limited options. So if you're gonna be trying to update your Shamir with this weapon refine, then you could try and do with the fodder and divine codes. So you could give her the Ascended for combat manual and give her the finish 4 skill, physical null follow-up, which is going to be helping you in case you get scowled, and if not, it still gives you the speed debuff. And you can also run attack speed Oath 4, as she does have the null attack and speed penalty, so you can safely boost up your attack and speed and also get better mobility. And now with this kind of refine that gives you the special cooldown -1 jump, you could run Emblem Marth with Deadeye and have a 1 cooldown Deadeye that you could immediately trigger on your first attack. And if the enemy is able to survive and they're able to counterattack, then because of Deadeye being a 1 cooldown special, if they don't have any kind of guard effect, then she's going to be triggering Deadeye again on her double attack. So this is the way to go to update her build with her refine. And if you're trying to improve her even more, then Creation Pulse is actually a pretty nice option for her, because it needs you to have 2 negative status effects on the enemy, and she already has the sabotage status with her refine, so you just need to support her with another negative status effect, and then you could have the special cooldown jump stack up with her refine, so you're going to be able to get 3 cooldown special jump, and that is going to be helping you even if you face any kind of scowl effect. So you're going to be still triggering Deadeye on your first attack, and then you could run Emblem Seagate so that you can retreat with the Canto and also have the +1 movement. Because we're going to be ensuring something like Deadeye to go off even against scowl effect, you could try and run some other sloppy skill like Assassin Strike, which is going to be giving you the true damage based on foe's defense, so it could be helpful. And then the finish skill is simply going to be her best slotty option to not only get the extra offenses but also get the true damage, which is easy to get with her special jumps. Finally, for the peak Shamir build, you could try and run her with Curve Shot. And now this might seem a bit weird for a unit that has got the sweep effect, but this is mainly to ensure your survival if you face any kind of null counter disrupt enemy. And because of the special jumping, it's really easy for her to trigger Curve Shot, and she can already run some skills that can give you the passive damage reduction piercing, like Speed Defense Tempo 4 or Physical Null Follow-Up. So I think Curve Shot could be run, and because of the special jumping, you're going to be triggering this on your first attack, and then you're going to be getting the unpierceable damage reduction. And if you run Time Pulse Echo, then you can pre-charge this, and your special jump can basically be an anti-scowl effect, so that's something you could do at max investment. And Speed Defense Tempo 4 is going to be giving you the Null Guard, so that you can trigger Curve Shot again on your double attack in case the enemy counterattacks, and you also get some damage reduction piercing. Oddspeed Wave 4 is going to be coming along with Curve Shot from Ash, so it is a pretty nice skill for getting the full null follow-up when we're going to be running the Tempo skill in her slot B. You can also try and use her with Brattle Catria, Winter Cordelia, or Ice Tribe Thea so that she can quad attack, and that way you could try and use something like Flash Barrow or Attack Speed Pledge to get these special charges and trigger your specials. But if you're not going to be quad attacking, then any of these skills can be useful for her. Otr gets his weapon refine in Remix, and it was an uphill battle with the insanity of the Anima Mythics, but he's still able to make a bit of a place for himself for something like Summoner Duels. So his weapon did give him +3 attack and fixed Canto 3 from turns 1 to 4, and now with the weapon refine, he's able to get the +11 attack in the combat and get +5 defense and resistance, and inflict -6 attack debuff on the enemy. He does have guaranteed follow-up attack and the follow-up denial, which can help him in some cases where units don't have the full null follow-up in their kit. He also has full damage reduction piercing on his special triggers now, and that's how it's done. And maybe Regan can learn a thing or two from him. And at the start of turn, for himself and the allies in 2 spaces, he gives them the unhindered movement status and the insighted status, just like Note. So the unhindered movement status does make him have a niche in Summoner Duels. More importantly in Summoner Duels S, because we just have so many insane cavalry units like Emblem Sigurd, and we also have Emblem Sigurd Ring, and too many of these Summoner Duels maps have these trenches, and Otr is pretty much going to be the go-to support unit for those kinds of cav lines in Summoner Duels S. And the two other units who could provide the unhindered movement status to the cavalry allies were Kadean Lind and Arlen. Keep in mind that Nabata Igrin doesn't give the unhindered movement status to the cavalry allies. So Kadean Lind simply didn't have the damage output to keep up with the far-safe tanks, and she has a really hard time contributing in terms of combat to her cav line team, whereas Otr is not going to be having that much of a trouble with something like Brutal Shell Plus. He could still hit hard, and Arlen is an infantry unit and pretty niche unit as it is, so cav lines were not really running him, and here Otr is going to be the pick for that, but it doesn't really help him in Ether8's defense, where he's an Anima Mythic. It's really hard to justify using Otr over Hathrin, Freyr, and even for Mortis and Mirabilis, who can provide the roll compression, and the unhindered movement status is not as useful in Ether8's defense. I mean, it could be helpful for catching people off guard as a novelty, but we have powerhouses upon powerhouses to choose from when it comes to Anima Mythics, and he's not going to be seeing the light of day in that game mode. He also has attack defense in combat panic, which does help him nuke better, as many units are going to be having the visible buff. So just make sure that you don't run him with any kind of lull effect, as it is going to be clashing with this effect. And then he also has true damage based on 20% of his defense, which does help him nuke a bit better. And then his remix to Brutal Shell Plus was not really all that insane. I'm not sure why they are underpowering these kinds of special remixes. Even like Literary Mail Ballad didn't have the craziest remix. So now he has got -3 special cooldown at sort of turns 1 to 4. And he has got the dynamic option select between Bonfire and Luna. So if your defense is more than the enemy, then the Bonfire is going to be going off. And if they have more defense than you, then Luna is going to be going off. He also has the 40% beacon damage reduction, which is going to be unpierceable. And he can definitely get a bit bulky with the attack defense excel that he gets on his remix. So I don't think Otr got the worst refine out of this batch. He at least got something, and now he has got the niche of the unhindered movement status, but they're probably going to be releasing some kind of premium unit who gives that support out in a couple of months. But until then, he could be used in Summoner Duels S, and if you stay away from Summoner Duels, then he's really not going to be doing much for Ether8's defense. Maybe in Arena Assault he could help you with that, but his main competitive game mode is going to be Summoner Duels, which is definitely quite weird, being an Anima Mythic. On a budget, Hit and Run has been always the slot B for many of the Otr users. You would know if you used him in Summoner Duels back when that game mode came out. So this could still be used, and his attack defense excel is actually his best slot A skill, so you don't really need to do any kind of changes. And Emblem Sigurd Ring is going to be appreciated on him so that he could get +1 movement, and that is going to be making him better as a nuke. I really wish he got the +1 movement out of his refine itself, which would have been a lot better. And then you also have the option of running Assassin Strike in Fatal Smoke 4 if you're going to be trying to make use of him in Ether8's defense. Again, having more defense and Fatal Smoke is a pretty good combination against the Breath of Life tanks. So you can try and stack up the true damage with Assassin Strike and his weapon, but still you'll have to watch out for Veil's Drive Scowl, as she's an Astra Mythic. And then if you're going to be using him in Summoner Duels, then I definitely suggest fodder Aided Regan to him so that he can get Shadow Shift and Flow Guard 4. It does make it so that his survivability is a lot better, and Shadow Shift is just amazing with his fixed Canto 3, so this allows you to have better openers in Summoner Duels. And at max investment, this is easily going to be his best slot C skill, like it is for Mythic Regan. And then finally, if you want to have the Scowl-proof nuking, you could try and run Momentum. Now, the only reason we're running Momentum here is to make sure that even against the Scowl effects, you're able to trigger Brutal Shell Plus, and Momentum also gives you 20 true damage, which is quite a lot for nuking. So this might seem a bit redundant at first, but if you want to improve his combat to the max, then it is something you could do, and it does have good synergy with the extra movement of Emblem Secret Ring. Guinevere was a really unique mage tank when she came out, and now she has got a Weapon Refine which tries to make her nuking a bit better and even tanking a bit better. So it did give her +3 resistance, and she does have the effective damage against tomes and also the null hexblade, so the adaptive damage doesn't work against her. And she also has the 7 HP healing after the combat and also for the allies in 2 spaces. So this is not all that insane, as nowadays we do have Divine Nectar and also Breath of Life. Now with the Weapon Refine, she's able to get +10 to all of her stats, and she also has the guard effect and the null guard, so that could help her sometimes in the tanking and also for firing off her specials. And then she gets true damage based on the highest total bonuses among herself and the allies in 2 spaces. So this is basically a better treachery, and if you've got +6 buff to all of your stats, she's gonna be getting 24 true damage, which is quite a lot, and her nuking is much better now. She also gets flat damage reduction based on 40% of the highest total visible buffs among herself and the allies in 2 spaces. So again, if you fully buff her up or her allies, then you're gonna be getting 9 flat damage reduction, which is not the highest compared to even a demo Refine of Ilyana, who does get 20 flat damage reduction out of it. It is kind of reminiscent of Ashera in that way, so she's able to get the true damage and flat damage reduction based on the buffs, and it does mean that you'll have to rely on your allies to fully buff up and take the full advantage out of this. You also are able to give yourself and the allies in 2 spaces the +6 speed and resistance buff and the null penalty status. So this means that if you were running her with a unity scale before, then it's worthless now with this refine. And like I said, you need to support her with the allies that can boost up the attack and defense. So Ecthenir is going to be the best teammate with her. Not only he can give you the bonus doubler, but he can also boost up the other stats. So it can help her utilize the effects out of her weapon fully, and you can actually get 36 true damage, which is much better. And you can also get 14 flat damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits. So Ecthenir is really going to be improving her combat by quite a lot. So this refine is also not that impressive. The favorite thing for me out of this refine is probably going to be the true damage that she's able to get, and now she can tank much better because of the flat damage reduction. So if you're going to be building her up even on a budget, then I do suggest grabbing Brave Soren out of the Divine Codes and giving her Magical Null Follow-Up, Time Pulse 4, and Flare. So Flare is going to be a really good special for her. You can also run Iceberg if you want to with her high resistance. So the finish skill is going to be giving you even more healing, and this is going to be the in-combat healing and also even more true damage. Magical Null Follow-Up is going to be helpful to get some damage reduction piercing, and also for getting the full Null Follow-Up being a fast unit. And then bonus doubler Sacred Seal is going to be really nice for her if you're going to be supporting her well. But at the max investment, her peak build is going to be utilizing Legu's Friend, which should not come as a surprise. She can also make use of C bonus doubler because she does depend a lot on the visible buffs, so this can help you, and this can also help you retaliate back to the dragons. And even though she doesn't have the highest defense, she is a bit more bulky now with the flat damage reduction. So Legu's Friend can give you the full damage reduction piercing and also give you the true damage. And Flare works out with Legu's Friend for her because she doesn't have minus and special cooldown in her weapon, and you can run Emblem Ike for even more unpierceable damage reduction, and you could productively make use of her visible resistance by running a ploy skill. So this can inflict the exposure status on the enemy, and this can give you even more true damage, and this also inflicts the ploy status on them, which can disable their bonus doubler status effects while you can enjoy yours with Ecthenir. And Time Pulse Echo is going to be coming along with Attune Chimera, so you could make use of it with Emblem Ike and Flare. And Ecthenir is going to be the key unit here for unlocking her max potential. Dithorba gets her unique weapon Heavenly Icicle, and this has got -5 speed defense and follow-up denial crux. So this is actually a pretty helpful supportive effect, as the Omnibreaker effect is going to be helpful against many of the units that do not have the full null follow-up. This kind of support is going to be paling in comparison to Seteth, who got an insane refine, and he's meta influential in ether raids and summoner duels. But I like Dithorba support a bit more compared to another lance flyer who got the crux effect like Gaul. I like follow-up denial a bit more than the guard crux that he has got. So this does have usage, but not the most insane support. Then she's able to inflict the -10 attack debuff in the combat, and also -5 speed and defense on the foe. So along with her crux effect, this is going to be equaling to be +10 speed and defense debuff. And she's got 40% damage reduction on foes' first attacks, including the brave hits. And this is the fully pierceable damage reduction. So it's not going to be all that useful realistically. I wish she got some kind of flat damage reduction on her resistance or something like that. And then she has got counter remaining +1 movement, which is going to be the Neotrace effect. So this means that you could just run her with Rain Snap, and then you don't have to use her with Emblem Seagate Ring, and instead you could run some other emblem. And she also has the dull attack, speed, and defense effect. So she's going to be ignoring any kind of visible buffs of the enemies. And again, this does mean that you should not be running her with the skills that also ignore the visible buffs of the enemies, which is going to be a bit redundant. And then she has got 16 true damage, and this true damage is going to be calculated based on the number of allies in 3 spaces of her and the number of foes that are in 3 spaces of target, including the target. So the cap of it is going to be 16, which is not that bad for improving her damage output. So she gets a bit of the things for her support with the crux effect, and then she improves her combat by a bit with the true damage. And she does have access to Pegasus Rift if you want to make use of her resistance. So if you're trying to update her, then with the Divine Code's fodder, you could try and run Guard Bearing 4. Not the best slot B again compared to Pegasus Rift, but you're not going to be having easy access to it. And then Rain Snap does have good synergy with her weapon. You get the +1 movement, you get even more speed and defense debuffs, and you could just run Emblem Marth for a 2 cooldown no quarter, which is going to be piercing the damage reduction of the enemy. And with the extra movement of Rain Snap, the Clash skill is going to be something that you should be running even on this kind of low investment. So it could be run both as the Sacred Seal and as slot A. Plus speed IV is going to be most useful, and if you're going to be ascending an asset, then plus attack could be run. And if you're going to be giving her more expensive skills, then Pegasus Rift should definitely be at the top of your list because it is good with her resistance, and you just need to have 40 or more visible resistance, and she's going to be having easily more than that to get the full effect out of Pegasus Rift, get the flat damage reduction, get even more true damage, and also make it harder for the enemy to double her with the Rift effect. It does have a bit of an overlap with the follow-up denial of her weapon, but not the biggest deal. Attack Speed XL can help you get the flat damage reduction, which is especially going to be useful in the enemy phase. And then Shadow Shift could be run so that you could position her allies better. The counter remaining movement that she's got in her weapon does mean that she could easily run this even without Emblem Secret Ring. So this does mean that it is a viable option for her slot C at this kind of investment. And then Soaring Echo is going to be, as per usual, on a flying unit. And then finally, if you want to stack up even more true damage for player phase nuking, then Momentum is an option with Rain Snap. So she's able to have 36 true damage with her weapon and Momentum, and then you pierce the damage reduction with No Quarter and Emblem Marth, which makes it a 2 cooldown special. So Rain Snap is pretty much going to be her best slot C options that you could try and run, and it is available in the Divine Code, so you should definitely be trying to run that. So you could take the semi-offensive and defensive route with Pegasus Rift, or you could go all in with the true damage in the player phase with Momentum. I want to thank all of my YouTube members for their constant support, and you can click the link on the stream right now to check out my breakdown of the new Ninja banner. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Summer Reed after seeing Tibarn's weapon refine. So with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.